Hi, Leo. Thank you so much for helping my project. Let's see, I know you're a student over there at Stanford, and I was wondering if you
Yes,
could say a little bit about yourself.
sure. Yeah. As you said, I'm a sophomore at Stanford currently. Um, Not quite sure what I want to be studying yet, but I know that with whatever I study, I want it to in some way relate to space. And I want what I do to be applicable to space. And I've uh, been I've definitely been interested in space my whole life, but uh, that sort of passion for it has really come alive at Stanford as I've met other students there who are also passionate about it.
Yeah, and I interviewed one of those other students earlier this week, Thomas.
Oh, nice.
So I was wondering, I didn't check. I meant to right before this meeting, but are you also a member of the Artemis band?
I'm not also a member. No, I have heard the band play and they're quite good. But I'm not a member of the band, unfortunately. I don't have any musical talent.
Well, that doesn't stop people.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
Um, so do you remember when you got interested in space? Like, was there a moment, or does it something that gradually happened? I mean, like, how did this interest come about?
Right. I would say I would say I think a lot of it came from I was enrolled in some sort of summer camp when I was very young, so maybe like kindergarten age, so I'm like 5 or 6. Um, and I did a camp where we took a cardboard tube just from like a paper towel roll and some Elmer's glue and little cardboard and cut that out into fins. And over the process of a week, made this like model rocket and then launched it. And maybe went up like 100 feet or something. But that was very exciting for me because you know, I had always been sort of engineering minded. I liked playing with blocks and stuff, but like that was the first like, oh, I built this like model rocket, like I built a real engineering thing that worked. And that was very exciting for me. And then apparently this was like the first time um this camp had ever been done. So on the day of the launch, like the whole community came out, the our local TV station came and like interviewed me and like everyone was super excited about it. I was excited about it. Um, and so that just felt very different to me than, playing with Legos or something where it's like I'm doing the actual thing. And that was very exciting for me.
Uh, and like, how did the interest develop after that point? I mean,
Sure. I think there's yeah, that's a that's a good question. I mean, I've always as I got older, I really liked reading sci-fi. And so that has a lot of space in it, interesting spacecraft. I got into sort of science fiction books that were more sort of it's called like hard sci-fi, so they have like more math and physics sort of going on in them. Um, and then even um, and then also just, being interested in what, NASA was doing. I am fortunate enough that I live near Vandenberg Air Force Base. And so occasionally they will launch rockets from there. And even when I was in elementary school, that was close enough that while I couldn't see an actual rocket, I could see a bright thing going up at the horizon, from the yard of the school. And so that was just super exciting for me. Um, and, I didn't really want to be an astronaut per se. I don't know that I ever have. Um, but I really liked the idea of working on a spacecraft, of going to space. I liked the idea of doing new things, of exploring. And, from a science perspective, one of the hardest things you can do is try to go to the moon. Um, Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so is it the actual rocket and the difficulty and the transportation, the engineering that really appeals to you, or is it something more than that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's changed over time. I would say originally for me, I was very much in a mindset of I was just interested in the rocket and like how do you get there? How do you, have an object get to the moon? And I was very sort of focused on the physics of it. I would say for me now, a lot more of it is, about um, what does it mean? I don't know. I think there's a lot of things like that are like in some ways space can be very meaningful. Looking at the ISS being a collaboration of, tens of different countries to, build something for science and research and for all of humanity. I think there's something really amazing and inspiring about that. In terms of, us becoming multiplanetary or going to the moon and looking back at Earth. I think there's reasons why that is very significant and very important. Um, and I also, my personal belief is that some of the hardest things about space aren't the engineering challenges, but are the how do you rally the public behind this idea? And and get the resources for this, and how do you get, if you just want to have a piece of metal land on the moon, that's hard but not that hard. If you want to get someone to land, say a human to land safely on the moon and come back, that's much harder. um but the human aspect of it is one of the more difficult challenges.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Most of the people I talk to don't even realize we're planning to send people to the moon in 2024. Everybody I talk to ask why. Some are there, even the people that are excited about it are like, okay, so what do they hope to achieve this time, type of thing. Um, what are your thoughts about rallying the public around it? Uh, well, how would we do that?
Yeah, so I think there's not one sort of size fits all for this. Um, I think, some people are very motivated by, what will this, what will my taxes going to the government? How will that help me? How will that help people here? Right? Some people are very motivated by that sort of reasoning. And you can talk about, jobs being created. These are very sort of pragmatic things. You can talk about jobs being created. You can talk about, better how more access in space can lead to better knowledge of Earth through like Earth observing satellites and that type of thing, right? You can know where storms are and evacuate people sooner, right? You can, you know, uh, better monitor all these things. It's a very sort of pragmatic point that, you know, um, but that is something that motivates some people. But I think for a large percentage of people aren't necessarily motivated by statistics or, that type of thing. And I think for that, you have to approach it more of um, why is it important that we go to space? The inspirational value of this, the um, how this can help us as a country or as a species move forward and work together. Um, you know, uh, um, how uh, going into space and looking back at Earth can help us understand that we're all on one planet, right? The many astronauts who've gone to space have talked about how it's been a very life-changing experience for them looking back on Earth and realizing that it's sort of one closed ecosystem. Um, but I definitely think there's also just a lot of like people who just don't know anything at all that we've like they vaguely know we've been to the moon and that's about it. One of my funnier memories from high school was I mentioned NASA to someone and they said, that's the group that spies on people, right? And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, they like spy on people. They're like looking at emails. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I realized they thought I was talking about the NSA and they thought the two organizations were the same group, right? They had never heard of NASA. They thought it was the NSA, right? And so that sort of stuck out to me as, oh, like this person has no idea that the ISS exists, has no idea what NASA is. They vaguely know we've been to the moon, and that's about it. And so for that, the first step with them is just education that this is something that's happening, right? Of letting people know, hey, we're trying to get to the moon by 2024, which is even a step before trying to convince them that it's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people that don't even believe it's possible or that we actually did it and things like this. And I, you grew up near Vandenberg Air Force Base and you saw signs of rocket launches and what have you, but the vast majority of the world probably does not grow up near any type of physical manifestation of the space program that they can see. Um, and I was just thinking, at some point, hopefully, the human activity on the moon is pronounced enough that somebody could actually observe it from the Earth. And I
Mm,
just wonder what kind of effect that would have on the world population. Essentially, at that point, every child would be living next to Vandenberg Air Force Base from the sense of there are humans up there. And the very
right.
next thought that follows after that, I imagine, would be, I want to be one of them. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know one thing that, is definitely not as accessible as being able to see something on the moon, but is that the Apollo astronauts set up this sort of reflective dish there that if you have a certain type of like amateur radio, you can bounce a signal off of it and know that like you're bouncing a signal off of this object that the astronauts left on the moon. Um, Again, that's not super accessible because you need to have this radio expertise and the money for that equipment. But I think that type of thing is a good idea of making something where people can go, hey, I myself with my own stuff want to be able to see like that there really is this thing on the moon. And you're right that something visible would definitely get that across too, though I think there's some questions about how much we want to modify the moon, but uh, that's definitely an interesting idea.
Yeah, I mean, what if it had like a big a set of mirrors that you can tilt, reflecting the sun's light, and actually, maybe it maybe it just cycles between 0 and 9 or something like that. Something less. Maybe that's too ominous too. I don't know. But um,
Yeah,
but I think there's a big knowledge problem, like you said. Thomas was saying that most of the people don't even know like what the name of the band refers to that he's a part of, and um, most of the people I've talked to don't know we're going to the moon, as I mentioned. In fact, one person even said they were wondering why NASA's keeping it a secret. And like even not just they weren't aware of it, but why is it actively not getting out?
right. It's very interesting to me because one thing that I struggle to reconcile is the fact that NASA has the 40th most followed Instagram globally. But there's still so many people who haven't heard of it or don't know what they're doing. And and that's sort of strange to me because, there's only like four even organizations that are in the top 50 accounts on Instagram. The rest are individual celebrities. So the fact that like NASA has reached, one of the top organizations globally that people are interested in seeing photos and, information from, but it's still not enough, because I don't know, and I think sometimes about the fact of I don't know if it's like there's not enough coverage in the press about it, or like there's not enough stuff doesn't happen. A lot of things happen with NASA and with space fairly slowly, right? It's years till we're getting to the moon. Like, is there not enough events constantly happening that people stay engaged?
Or
I don't
maybe
know.
just too many events and too many different types of events. I mean, you got, contacting Voyager 2 after so long of not hearing from it, and then, getting a sample from asteroid, and, launching rovers to Mars, and, the um, sending a group of 4 astronauts to the International Space Station on a SpaceX rocket, and, trying to get to the moon with Artemis. Maybe the Instagram uh, account is being followed by a group of people that are thinking of NASA as being very different than other members of that same group.
Right. And, and it is also, I guess, worth noting that, 60 million is a lot if it was just people in the US following them, but globally, that's a very small fraction of the population.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Um, and I'm sure NASA has multiple Instagram accounts, and it'd be interesting to see how many of
Right.
those are individuals versus institutions, all these
Yeah.
government contractors and stuff.
Yeah, I know like the ISS has its own Instagram account and that type of thing. I know at one point I had I think I had like 10 different sort of Instagram accounts that were different parts of NASA I was following because like each NASA facility will have their own account and that type of thing. Um and I think a lot of people also, they a lot of the people who follow that sort of follow it for they post cool photos um in a way where we don't have any photos really of being on the moon in 2024. I mean, we have, sort of mock up, sort of computer generated things like your background, right? Um, but it's hard to envision being on the moon in 2024 in a way where, lots of photos of here's what the Bahamas look like at space is very pretty and sort of fun to see, and people can really understand that.
The other side of it, what if we had a camera on the moon with this view? Uh, could you shine a laser bright enough that you would actually be able to see it from this perspective? I wonder how powerful of how much light you would have to generate.
Oh, that would be interesting. Yeah, uh, that would probably, I would say it is possible for a laser to do that. My impression would be pretty hard. I don't want to get into a tangent about it, but I did work at a lab that was an astrophysics lab that was specifically looking at having lasers on the ground on Earth that would be communicating with stuff in space. Um, so I would say it is possible, but your laser pointer from 7-Eleven isn't gonna cut it. Um, uh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if you could have something on the moon that was showing this view 24/7, that might be of interest to a certain set of people. I know I would be interested in that.
Yes, I know there's the ISS, the International Space Station, has this live stream constantly going of a view of the Earth, and I know that that's fairly popular. I think like Apple made it one of the like default screensavers on their Apple TV,
Hmm.
right? Because NASA made it anyone have access to this, they can use it for whatever. And so lots of people used it because it's just very visually stunning and it's always different. And so that's something really people really enjoy. And so I could definitely see a view of the Earth from the moon being something that people would definitely enjoy having as like a screensaver or something that they have there. And even if they originally, pick it just as a screensaver, it still means that it's something they're thinking about and experiencing and really appreciating constantly.
And I saw a paper about this, but what do you think about a business model where you have a whole bunch of little moon rovers, like remote control cars on the moon that people could drive around, and rent by like the in like 5-10 minute blocks. Uh, just wondering if people would be of interest in that. Just the idea of being able to control this device that's like on the moon.
Yes. What I would say about that is, um, I think many people would be very interested in that, and would be willing to pay a lot of money for it, even if it's only 10 minutes. Um, my only comments on it are mostly from a practical standpoint, which is the Mars rover moves at a speed of like 0.01 miles per hour. Literally. I mean, that's not the exact number, but it's around there. It's extremely slow, because they don't want it to crash into anything or to break, because it was so expensive to get it there. And so they basically say, okay, go forward 10 feet, and that's instruction for the day. Uh, so obviously, if it was going at that speed, that probably wouldn't be super fun, for people, or something people would want to do, right? Because I'm picturing, like, I'm looking at the background behind you in the rover there. Like, if you have that going around at the speed that like a little remote control car here on Earth goes, like people are crashing it into stuff or like having it go off craters and stuff. Like I just feel like it would people would break it really easily. Um, but I mean, that being said, maybe you design it to be really sturdy and really tough, in a way where, that won't happen, and maybe you have another robot that's just dedicated to flipping over ones that get stuck on their back because they went into a crater. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and indeed. Uh, and of course, then you have the issues of how do you keep them charged and the communication with
Right.
it, and how do you get them there in the first place? But that problem is being solved, right? I mean, with the
Yes.
Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program,
Yep.
you and I could actually pay money and have stuff delivered to the surface of the moon.
Have you heard of Life Ship?
I have. In fact,
Yeah.
not only have I heard of it, let's see. I gotta turn off the video or the virtual background. Here we go. Yeah, not only have I heard of
Nice.
it, but I actually and I interviewed the founder of LifeShip as well for this program.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's
Yeah,
actually
because I was gonna say, because you were mentioning having people bring things to the moon, and I think that's a great one because it's so expensive by weight to bring things, but just a DNA sample is so tiny and so light that you can take a lot of them, and that's something that I think could be really could be very meaningful for people, that they can, that they can. Uh, I think many people, on some level, want to seek this is getting a bit of a philosophy, but want to seek immortality in some ways. And I think for many people, this is the idea that they or their loved ones can exist forever, by putting a sample of their DNA on the moon. And so I think that can be a very motivating thing for people and will also make it so that when people are looking up at the moon, it now has a special meaning to them because that might be where their family member's DNA is resting after their family member passed. And so now they have a very emotional attachment to the moon in a way that they might not have before. So I'm a big fan of LifeShip in the sense that I think it makes sense from a business perspective, and I think will also increase interest and engagement and people valuing the moon.
yeah, and in fact, they're sending the LifeShip things to the moon on Astrobotic
Right.
Peregrine lander, which anybody, you and me, can buy a DHL Moonbox on. And I've bought one, and I am planning to send a terabyte micro SD card with this video on it. So um,
Nice.
you'll you'll have a
Oh,
connection to the
that's
moon
very
too.
fun. Oh, wow. Okay. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm looking for other things to send too. I was thinking about a copy of the Wikipedia, and I
Mm.
was interviewing one yesterday, the curious astronaut who does this weekly space roundup newsletter. So it's going to send his archives. But even with all that, I mean, it's amazing. You get a terabyte and it's like this
Right.
small. It's like,
Yeah. No, it's yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I know NASA with their Mars rover had you could put their name and they were gonna like etch it on a microchip, everyone's name, and they just had that available for free. And that was also I did that and that was also pretty amazing of oh, my name is gonna be physically written on an object on Mars. Um was pretty cool. And, I think there's a lot of things like that where it's like, I don't know if like these groups, NASA or LifeShip like need to have, better marketing or better advertising, but something because, everyone I told, hey, if you fill out this form online, NASA will write your name on this object that's going to Mars. It's free and takes like 30 seconds. They were like, whoa, that's so cool. And like literally everyone I talked to wanted to do that. Um, and yet I never encountered someone who was like, oh yeah, I've already heard of that. I already did it. Like no one. And so I there's gotta be something that needs to happen there. Same with LifeShip. I'm like, this seems like something almost everyone would want to do, but yet it's fairly obscure. Um, so I don't know. Yeah.
um, so when you look out at the future of humanity, let's say, if we look back, 500 years ago, Christopher Columbus came to North America, and now we have, Houston and Vandenberg Air Force Base, New York City, and a whole bunch of development. And we have airplanes and computers. But if you look out like another 500 years, where do you see humanity, especially in terms of its place in the universe? Are we still mainly on Earth making little side trips to places, or do you think by that point we've actually became a multi-planetary, spacefaring civilization where we have people on the moon, people on Mars, we're doing asteroid mining, we're creating mega structures that are harnessing the sun's energy and giving us essentially unlimited energy. Um, I mean, like, which one of those you think?
Right. So my view is that right now, Earth is where everyone is, right? And the few people who go to space, it's a luxury to go to space. You're either an astronaut or you're like a billionaire or a celebrity. I mean, those are the ways you get to space, in the near future. And I think that long term, um, I don't think it's particularly pleasant. You might want to visit because it's interesting, but I don't think it's particularly pleasant to live on Mars or the Moon. And so, what I see, and you can debate whether this is a good thing or not, but what I think will happen is that you will have a lot of heavy industry, mining, manufacturing, that type of thing happening on the moon and Mars and maybe the asteroid belt. And that Earth is where everyone wants to live because there's an atmosphere, it's green, it's beautiful, that it's this great big park. It's really a wonderful place to be. Um, and like and that you will end up maybe with uh people living permanently on Mars or the moon who might be saving up the money for making mining because they want to move to Earth, that Earth is more of a sort of luxury thing almost. I don't know. And so I think that's where things heading. I'm a big fan of heavy industry not being on Earth for protecting the environment. I'm less of a fan of making Earth the place that not everyone can live. So I have mixed feelings about this vision. Um, but I think that's where things could go very long term, where we might actually see a flip of the Earth is where you want to be, the other planets are where where people are trying to get away from, whereas right now it's the opposite. And I think will be for many decades, it'll be a luxury to go to Mars or the moon. That'll be the thing you want to do as an adventure. Um, but I think that could flip in eventually.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Of course, if you grew up on Mars or a moon or on free space, coming to Earth, I mean, you
Might
really
not.
have to
Yeah,
get in shape for it. You'd be like, oh my gosh.
right. And one thing, uh, in the same way, I would say you talked about Columbus. Um, the first people who came the first Europeans, I should say, because there are already people here, the first Europeans who came to America, they were Columbus and these other sort of um, wealthy explorers who had, gotten all this funding from the royalty in Spain, right? So it was a government program, and it was these sort of wealthy explorers going. But long term, the Europeans who came to America were those who were being persecuted, those who were looking for new life, who were facing financial hardship, religious hardship, right? Um, and it wasn't particularly pleasant to be in the U.S. at first, or the colonies, I should say, right? It got, it's certainly better now, but especially at first, it was, that's where there's, it's very rough. It's, not necessarily where you want to be, but maybe where the economic opportunity is. And so I could certainly see some parallels there with space exploration colonization, though my hope is that maybe we will have learned some lessons and do things maybe a little differently than we did in the age of Columbus.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point because people didn't come to the America because it was so lush and wonderful. They came because Europe was so bad. Uh, like Andrew Carnegie, his father came not because there was such a great economic opportunities here, but because his father had just bought and mortgaged everything to buy three manual looms right as the mechanical loom got created, and his family was kind of in dire straits, economically speaking. So,
Mm,
um, I, so I feel like, in terms of the future, I hope it does unfold kind of like you're talking about, and that, you know, it's a nice, pleasant unfolding, but that's definitely not been the track record. So that would be a kind of
right.
exceptional thing. I feel like though the next 10 years are really going to be transformative with respect to space. And I like to say that I feel like the 2020s are going to be the space exploration what the 1990s were to the internet. Um,
Mm,
in 1990, you would probably have an easier time explaining to somebody why astronauts float in space than what email was or web shopping was, or even what the internet would become. And then by 2020, everybody knew, it's like, or not 2020, but 2000, everybody knew. So like in
yeah.
that 10 years, we went from everybody being clueless to everybody being connected and clueless. But no, that's a different story. Uh, and I feel
Yeah.
like the 2020s are going to be the same thing. And I really pin my hopes probably specifically down to Starship, SpaceX's Starship vehicle. If they are able to make that work, and they're having a single Starship making 3 flights a day, and they're manufacturing 2 of these a week, I mean, that's like a, you know, I mean, within 1 week of Starship flights, we would have probably done more like actual physical transportation of stuff into space than we've done the entire history of humanity. Um,
Yes.
and I was wondering how familiar you were with Starship and how transformational you think that might be.
So I have uh been a big fan of SpaceX for a long time. For my like 13th birthday, I think it was, my parents asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I said I wanna go to the SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. So that's what we did. Um, so definitely been a big fan of SpaceX. I definitely follow what they've been doing. I've recently been applying and interviewing for a job working out on Starship. Well, who knows if I'll get it, but so definitely very interested in helping with that mission because I agree that that could be really transformative. And I I think there's, the Saturn V design was originally drawn up in the 40s. Um, it's old. It's really, really old and using very old technology. The Soyuz capsules that Russia uses, they have the same factory still running and making the same designs that they were making in the 60s. Even well, as the Soviet Union fell, the factories there didn't stop working on the Soyuz capsules, and their designs haven't changed since the Cold War. So that's where I think SpaceX has it really it's time for new, more modern rockets. And I think, you know, the analogy SpaceX uses of, before reusable rockets, it's like making a 747, doing a 5-hour trip and then shoving it into the ocean. It just didn't make sense. Um, and so I think having a lot of these rockets and, having them be reusable, having them be efficient, having them, have a lot of storage in them, and and have a really good safety track record and fly autonomously, I think that will do wonders. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and it's really kind of interesting, once you get the system in place. I mean, if there were weekly trips to the moon, uh, you're not going to be able to use up all that capacity in every flight, which always creates like a little space for kind of fringe players that would never ever get a
right.
chance to kind of come in there and start doing things.
Yeah, there's for, schools or nonprofits or stuff, there's really cool things that can be done there. In terms of getting a system in place, a fact I sometimes talk to people about is, you know, what NASA's working on with a space launch system, this is costing them billions. And a lot of that is because we abandoned um, the space shuttle and a lot of the work we did with Apollo program. Because when the Apollo program ended, because they had all the infrastructure in place, it would have cost them $10 million in today's money to go to the moon again.
Hmm.
Because they already had the rockets built, they already had the infrastructure, the training, the facilities, everything in place. It was already, even when they weren't reusable, it was that inexpensive to go to the moon. I mean, it's still expensive, which is why they stopped. Because they were, doing tons of these launches and they were switching to the space shuttle. Um, but that's where I'm like, yeah, once you have all of this in place, you can really cut down on costs. Um, so yeah, and I'm really hopeful because, you know, I could totally see people where it's like, you could definitely, I see a lot of fringe stuff, as you were saying, of someone goes, I have a painting and I want it to be on the moon. You know, I um I wrote a song and I want it to be on the moon. Like I think many people want to preserve things. I mean, you think about people doing time capsules. No one would do a time capsule if they could instead put it on the moon,
Hmm.
right? Because they know, oh, it will actually be preserved there potentially for permanently, right? Um, And so all of the energy people go into preserving and archiving and that type of thing would then do on the moon. Um, but yeah, no, I think Starship can be a great opportunity. My only comment on it is that um, I think sometimes SpaceX is guilty in the same way that I've been in the past of sometimes thinking of the engineering aspects over the people aspects of the thing. For instance, they say Starship will also take people to Mars. they haven't particularly talked about the radiation people would deal with on the way to Mars. That just isn't something they talk about. Um, uh, so, and to be fair, when the Saturn V was designed, it was originally designed to go to Mars. That was the original pitch. And NASA said, no, we want to go to the moon first. The Saturn V, the capsule was tiny. You were not that would not have worked to go like the Saturn V may have been able to physically get to Mars. Starship may be able to physically get to Mars, but that doesn't mean that it's ready for people to be in it going to Mars or other places.
I know it's like taking a two-door car, itsy bitsy, and kind of driving from like South America all the way to Alaska without ever getting out. And
Right. Yeah, and so, and definitely that was where I used to be from this perspective of thinking of just of a person as just an object. What's their weight? What's their size? Put them in a box and then make sure the rocket can get that box to the moon. But actually, there's a lot more issues going on there um, than that with how you deal with getting people there.
absolutely. And you mentioned that only astronauts, billionaires, and I think you mentioned one other group.
Celebrities.
Celebrities will actually go to space. Have you heard of this thing called Space Hero?
No, I have not.
Okay, it's a reality TV show that's in the works.
Oh, okay. Yes, I didn't know the name, but I do know of it. Yes.
Okay, what do you think about
Yeah.
that?
Um, Boy, I have very mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I am all for increased access to space, and I hope that it's not just billionaires and entrepreneurs and celebrities who go. I really hope it's open to more people. I've been volunteering for like 8 months at this nonprofit, Space for Humanity, if you've heard of them. Um, so I'm very much about getting more people to space, people from more diverse backgrounds where they're not just, Elon Musk or, a former Air Force test pilot, right? Um, so I very like that aspect of the reality TV show program that normal people will be going to space. Um, my only concern about it is, reading it said, okay, they're going to be competing in, you know, like science and space related challenges. That's how we're going to be competing for this spot. And my only worry about that is, um, is sort of misrepresenting what space or science is like, simply because I think, doing math is not visually interesting. It's not something fun to watch people do. They're not going to do that on a reality TV show, right? Having someone do programming isn't fun to watch. Having someone calculate orbital trajectories isn't fun, right? That's not interesting. Like I will freely admit that those are I program, I do some of those things, if I'm not very good at math, but I will freely admit those are not fun things to watch me do. Those are not that interesting. And so I do worry that they may have things that might seem like, oh, they're mixing three colors of liquids together and they're trying to see how to get, if they mix the right ones, it turns purple and then they win that challenge, right? Um, and if it was something like that, and I don't know what it's going to be, but if it was something like that, I'd be concerned that that might be misleading people as to what science or space is like. But
Yeah,
maybe they will do it in a way that's really tasteful and good. I have no idea.
yeah, I've not heard that about the challenge thing, and I've been trying to read everything I get my hands on, so I'm a little surprised that I missed it. But I did sign up for the Insiders program, which is supposed to be like this group of people that kind of are able to promote it and what have you. And I got accepted, so I'll be attending a meeting with the Space Heroes people in the middle of December, and hopefully I'll find out more and make it
Yeah.
against it.
Yeah,
But
I mean, my current stance on it is, seems cool. Don't know enough information yet. Um, and and I would say overall, definitely seems like a good thing to me. Though again, a lot of it has to do with what are the challenges going to be like? What kind of people are they picking? What is the process like? How are they marketing this? And I think a lot of that we'll have to see how that goes. But
But
um,
I think if you look at American Ninja, that kind of challenge show where you have like them doing feats and stuff, that seems to attract a lot of people. And from like the astronaut training and selection, there are a lot of visually appealing kind of
that's true. There are
things.
definitely some. Yes.
Like the like some of the emergency rescue type of training and you have
And
like
the
the
centrifuge
this and the
spin them around
neutral
and
buoyancy lab and
yeah,
a whole bunch of other things like there may be survival training. You might
right,
I know some of the astronauts go up on like these wilderness survival training things to kind of help build
right,
team type of thing, and I can see that being like a survivor type of
right.
situation.
Yeah, no, so I definitely think there are ways that this can be done that could be really good. Um, and then I don't know if you know this, but um, I was curious if they would just be going up sort of as passengers and there'd be like NASA astronauts doing all the piloting, or would the concept be that after they win the challenge that they then go through the NASA training process? I don't know if you have any information on that.
I don't have anything yet. And
Okay.
honestly, I I imagine those decisions hadn't even been figured out yet. I
Yeah,
the thing I get is like some people got together and said, "Hey, we want to." I mean, this is my perception of it.
right.
Is that people got together and said, "We want to have this reality thing." They connected with Axiom Aerospace, which does
Mm,
have a contract with SpaceX to send like a private mission to the ISS. They're sending Tom Cruise next year, so it's like a
yes,
legitimate organization. So, um, and I
right,
think they're very much in the let's try to put it together, generate some interest, get some sponsors, and make it happen type of
right.
stage. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I definitely think that that might be the next step with, um, Tom Cruise and that type of thing of, it's not your everyday person going up, but it's someone who's not part of NASA or the military, right, who's outside of that world and who is someone that people may like people can identify, like, even though Tom Cruise is a famous celebrity, people still understand and can identify with him better than they can identify with a NASA astronaut they've never heard of before, right? Um,
Definitely. And I
and
just wonder though,
yeah,
Tom Cruise's Mission Impossibles with all the special effects, I just have trouble imagining a video shot on the space station being as
right,
visually appealing as one of these
right.
action films.
And I've also that's another one where I'm like I'm sort of excited about that, but it'll really be in the details how this plays out because maybe they are only filming 30 seconds of him weightless in the ISS and that's just part of a small part of one scene and they just want to have the publicity of saying Tom Cruise went to space, right? So it could be that. But I know they're sending up Tom Cruise and a director. So we're gonna have a real person there filming him and directing. And so maybe we're gonna do have him do a spacewalk and they're gonna have some action sequence of him going around and doing a spacewalk. I mean, I have no idea. But I will say I love the ISS, the interior of the ISS. A lot of wires, cables, equipment going everywhere. Not particularly visually stunning. You can't move around too quick in there, or you're gonna break yourself or some equipment in there. you know. Uh, uh, so I don't know. We'll really have to see how that turns out, but I'm definitely excited because Mission Impossible movies are big movies that have big advertising campaigns and millions of people watch them. And, that could be a great way for people to learn about the ISS.
Yeah, it could be. Of course, in order to make it entertaining, they may give people a completely different idea on what it really
Right,
is.
right.
So,
Um, yeah. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out, but um I think he and that director will quite possibly be the first people going to space where they have no training as an astronaut in the sense that they cannot pilot it but are passengers. In
well,
the same way,
they won't be the first. There have been, I think, 6 or 7
okay,
paid the space tourists. Richard
r-
Garriott here in Texas, as well as
right.
Ansari, and then a guy from Microsoft,
Have
and
they been, did they go to the ISS or just into like orbit?
they went to the ISS for
Okay,
a
okay.
week. Before the space shuttle retired, they would send up a new Soyuz ever so often, and the
Right.
crew that took it up would only stay for a week. And usually it was 2 astronauts, and the Soyuz has 3 seats. So they would
Got
sell
it.
the third seat to these space tourists.
Yeah, I know one of the first people to do it was the Soviet Union sent up a Japanese journalist um, to do like to talk like live on TV from orbit in the Soyuz capsule. Um, uh, that I was reading an article about it yesterday from I think it was like uh, from a while ago. And it didn't go very well. um, yeah, but yeah, I mean it'll be. I guess yeah, it's true that there have been tourists before, but I don't know. There's something. I guess maybe this is one of the most high profile ones that will be happening. Of uh, people when they're hearing Tom Cruise is doing a dangerous stunt. I'm already imagining there will be many articles about this as we get closer to the date that he's launching, right? And lots of coverage, both from media that's interested and also from the film studio wanting to generate publicity about this. Um, and so there'll be, I think, just a really large amount of coverage about this once we get closer to it.
Yeah, I think so. It definitely raised awareness. Yeah, it's kind of neat. So would you go to space if you could?
Um, I would, if I could, would definitely be interested in going to like low Earth orbit or the ISS. That, with our current technology, I think that would be something I'd be comfortable doing, and would want to do. Um, Going to Mars, uh, sounds very dangerous, radiation damage, kind of scary to me. I don't think I would really want to do that anytime soon. Even going to the moon, it's very dangerous. Um, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just from a safety perspective. I don't think I'd feel comfortable going to the moon anytime soon. But I think with going to the ISS, we do so many flights of cargo and people to the ISS, and those run smoothly. They know how it works. Like that's an established process where I think I'd be comfortable doing that. You're still in Earth's electromagnetic field, so you're mostly protected from radiation. You're not gonna have any long-term health issues. It's, relatively safe. You go for, maybe you go for a week, you have a really cool experience, you come back in a way where, you know, going to the moon takes a long time, is dangerous. Going to Mars even more so, that could, the flight time there and back, you're talking, maybe a year or two, all this radiation damage and stuff. I'm like, no. um, yeah.
Well, Leo, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
I don't think so, but yeah, thank you for interviewing me. This is just a really cool thing you're doing, and I think is great for spreading awareness. Um, uh, is this, I don't know how many Stanford students you want because I don't know how dissimilar our stories or opinions are, but if you want me to, I'd be happy to share this with other students I know who might be interested.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, I have more than 1,500 days to get through.
So
And
more people.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, I will share this, and I'm sure there will be other students who will be interested in doing this.
Yeah, and especially if they don't have a space interest, they might have a really neat
Mm,
perspective, like
right,
an art student or a biologist or a political science,
right.
literature.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much. That would be fantastic. I would really appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, thanks. This was fun.
Okay, yeah, I had fun too. Talk to you later then.
See ya.
Bye bye.